I'm going to be talking about our latest publication called Molla Nasreddin, the magazine that would have, could have, should have. My name is Payam Sharifi, and I'm one of the co-founders of Slavs and Tatars. And Slavs and Tatars is a collective of that's dedicated to an area east of the Berlin Wall and west of the Great Wall of China. So, in a very transnational way, we decided to look at this book, which is, I should clarify, is actually named after the Hoca Nasreddin, but is not about Hoca Nasreddin. Hoca Nasreddin is a kind of mascot for the book, or inspiration for the title of the book, and he features on many of the covers. This magazine is an Azeri publication, Azeri weekly. Each issue is about 12 pages, and it ran between 1906 to 1930. And we discovered Molla Nasreddin actually in an old bookshop in Baku, near the Maiden Tower, very center of town. The Azeri government is reissuing the publication in almost in facsimile, in an effort to kind of to define what is an Azeri identity, in a sense, the nation state, insofar as it's a republic which has existed for very few years before 1991, and on two very short occasions. The publication is probably most notable for its illustrations. And the illustrations, this is an example of one. This is a Russian Tsarist officer pushing the Azeris to go to the mosque on Sunday because it was the day of prayer for the Russian Empire, but of course insensitive of what the day of prayer should be. And it poked fun at the kind of misunderstandings or miscommunication between the Muslim world and the West. Here you can see the sort of veiled women shirking in horror, just as the European women are kind of, Europeans are also taken aback. And the publication was, as I mentioned, was a political satire, very progressive and very much of its time, in the sense that it was pro-Westernization as modernization, but also anti-colonialist, quite nationalist, and very much progressive in the sense of pushing for women's rights. The book Molla Nasreddin started out as a research from a cycle of research that we did called Kidnapping Mountains for a show in Belgium, our first show in a public institution. And of course it was a celebration of the Caucasus as a kind of case study of complexity, both linguistic and national complexity. And in a similar way, that the book was a kind of forward-looking book, in the sense that often books or publications that accompany exhibitions are usually the end point or the destination. This book was a kind of a repository of research that has continued to inform pieces and practice in the 2 years since it's been published. And I think it's important to note, just to state also that in fact, Slavs and Tatars was founded in the same principle. We did not call ourselves Slavs and Tatars because we pretend to be authorities of any sense on Eurasia. It's actually a mission that we gave ourselves, that we would devote ourselves to studying this region, and not in any way kind of a moniker for an expertise of any sort. Like Jalil Mahmad Guladzadeh and Alekber Sabir. Mahmad Guladzadeh was the editor-in-chief, and Sabir was the kind of the poet-in-chief, or the poet in charge of the publication. He was kind of like an H.L. Mencken of the Caucasus, and his name, Alekber Sabir, he used many pseudonyms because he came under so much attack for his kind of polemical poetry. And one of my favorite pseudonyms of his was Hop Hop, which means patience in Azeri. And they were both sort of champions of the poor, of secular sort of anti-colonialism, and they were both very influenced by Jadidism. And Jadidism was a 19th century reform movement of Soviet Muslims. One of the other sort of fathers of this publication was Mirza Fatali Akhundov, who was an advocate of Latinizing the Azeri alphabet, because of course in Azeri you have 9 vowels that you can't convey with the Arabic alphabet. And here's a cover that commemorates Akhundov in what year, 1911. As I mentioned, the publication was, as unlikely as it seems, it was kind of champion of a certain kind of feminism, let's say. It poked fun at the double standard of Muslim women at the time, vis-a-vis Muslim women, and the double standard of Muslim men vis-a-vis Muslim women, but also European women. Here you have the Azeri women pointing at a prison, saying, "Look how lucky they are! They at least have windows," because of course their house on the right has no windows. Here you have respects being paid to the bride at the top, and then at the bottom, after a month, sort of no sign of those same respects. And I think one of my favorite ones is Abdul Rashid, a mullah, sort of explaining to a Japanese woman, because of course this was after Japan had beaten the Russians in the 1905 war, and Japan was far ahead of Russia and the Russian Empire. And it says, "Dear lady, no matter how much progress you've made, you don't compare with Muslim women because you don't cover your face." The Azeri language was actually how we first fell in love with this publication, with Molla Nasreddin. Here you have two members of the State Duma, the Russian Duma, sewing off the Azeri tongue and sewing back a Russian tongue, so that the Azeri has to speak Russian. The publication is kind of probably one of its big coup or strengths was that it was published in Azeri Turkic and not in Istanbuli Turkish, which would have been probably more accepted at the time. Most of the other publications in Azerbaijan were either published in Russian or in Istanbuli Turkish. Azeri wasn't considered a proper literate language, and even today, and that's why the magazine still remains so relevant, even today kind of the elite of Azerbaijan speak Russian to each other, and as opposed to speaking Azeri to each other. So it was advocating for a sense of pride in Azeri sort of culture. And here you have students asking their teacher, "Mirza, we also have our own tongue, let us study it a bit also." And the teacher says, "No, Azeri Turkish is forbidden, I need to stuff this language into your mouth." And you can see that just the difference in illustrations. This one dates from 1718. As soon as the Bolshevik Revolution happened, the quality of the publication, and both illustrations and even some of the content, declined because of the pressure from Moscow. And most of the illustrations you're going to see on the left, for example, are done by two Germans, Otto and Schlimmer, and this is done by Aziz, an Azeri illustrator. The Azeri alphabet, unlike your alphabet, changed 3 times in 100 years, in 70 years. So you had Arabic, of course, on one page. You can see how schizophrenic it is. You had Arabic until 1929, Molla Nasreddin on top. You have Latin. You have in 1929, basically Lenin advocated for the revolution of the East, for all the Muslim subjects of the Russian Empire or the Soviet Soviet Union to Latinize their alphabets. That was considered to be the revolution of the East. This is 1 year after Ataturk Latinized, or your language was Latinized, and of course it was also a way to separate the population from its Islamic past, which is of course written in Arabic, but a large amount of knowledge was lost because it was done with such force that people were forced to bring out books written in Arabic and burn them. And apparently Azerbaijan had quite a strong tradition in, for example, Islamic natural medicine, which today the Germans are leaders in homeopathy, but apparently much of that homeopathy was first based on a particularly Azeri early homeopathy, or Islamic homeopathy if you want. And then of course Stalin came in 1939 and said, "You know what, you guys are becoming too close to the West, let's Cyrillicize everything." So again, take everything out, burn all your books, let's do it Cyrillic. And then 1991, back to Latin. So you have a situation where 3 generations in Azerbaijan speak the same language, but they can't ostensibly read the same book. And that obviously poses some problems for us, and even in terms of translation, it's easy to find a translator in any language almost, but it's difficult to find a translator who speaks who can read and write all 3 iterations of his own language. And this actually inspired one piece of ours, which is called, which is taking a very famous kind of a proverb: "Fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me; and fool me thrice, shame on Latin." And sort of, we thought maybe Azeri should be rewritten as sort of, out of frustration, just saying Azeri, because you just go crazy with the kind of the actual amount of transcription that you have to do. And here you have just the 3 examples. And the caption here reads, this is poking fun at the very Islamic natural medicine that I just mentioned. And that says, the doctor tells the patient, if you drink this medicine once every 100 years, you'll be cured. Another piece we did, this is a vacuum form piece, and it's called Dig the Booty. It's a proverb of our own making this time, and it says, dig the booty of monoglots, but marry my child a polyglot. Which means basically, if you want to sleep around and have a one-night stand, do so with somebody who speaks one language, but if you want to settle down and, you know, have children, and you should do so with somebody who speaks many, just in case, kind of the vicissitudes of languages. And I think this is indicative of our practice in, I think, two ways. One is, first of all, we transcribed it. It's not transliterated. So this is the same exact phrase in Cyrillic, dig, da, buti, which is not Russian, obviously, it's English. And then the same in Farsi or Arabic. It says, for those who we could read, dig the buti av manavat. So transcription is a kind of the trashy younger sibling, if you will, of translation. We think about translation a lot. We have very learned scholars like Nabokov and others who translate. Transcription is something that we do almost on a daily basis. If you speak other languages, I transcribe Russian into Latin just for the sake of emails. Today we were talking about certain Turkish letters which disappear if you write them, so they're disappearing from kind of emails. So transcription, in a way, is at once this kind of onslaught of hegemony of the English language, so Latin, but also it's kind of it's very stupid. It's kind of simple stupid. And in a similar way, I think another thing is that we often try in our work to combine two extremes in one voice, or bring together two things which are usually mutually exclusive on one page. And in this case, in English, you rarely have somebody use the word booty and monoglot in the same sentence. People who say booty don't usually say monoglot, and people who say monoglot don't usually say booty. So, and it's an attempt in general in our work to bring together what's the polemical, or let's say the kind of the macro language of whether geopolitics or political discourse, with the kind of intimate micro voice of the singular intimacy or singular person. Here is an illustration of kind of poking fun at East versus West. The left is the world according to the devil. So the Molla Nasreddin is poking at, of course, the kind of modernized European city. And on the right is the world according to believers, where you have sort of saints chasing birds and donkeys. Of course, like a similar period here in Turkey, you had this kind of view of westernization as progress, both education and technology, and also against superstition, against the passivity of Muslims in the face of exploitation, but also against clericalism. So, taking the piece of technology, for example, here is a kursu. I don't know if you had the same thing here. It's the same word in Turkish, but it was a kind of pre-industrial heating mechanism where you have people sitting around a table, and underneath where your feet are, you would put coal or fire, and then cover with a blanket. And of course, here he's making fun of the Azeris who say, how do these poor Russians live without one? And of course, the Russians at the time already had heating systems, so they would need a kursu. And here you have in Iran, sort of, it said on the left-hand side, Europeans take pride in their aircraft. They should come take a look at our aircraft instead. And they've sent Muhammad Ali Shah, the Majar king, off as like a blimp abroad when he escaped during the Constitutional Revolution. Here's a very good one as well, is that the husband has invited a doctor to visit his wife who has a sore throat, an angine, and she won't uncover herself for the doctor, despite her husband's pleas. She says, absolutely not, I won't uncover it for anything. But as soon as the mullah comes, she's happy to have him write a prayer on her open breast. So it's kind of the hypocrisy, or the superstition of the wife. And here you have a Azeri man with his Azeri wife, but the same man being cowered by his Russian lover. So this kind of double standard.